We have so many different cultures around the world where you can very easily make mistakes, and that can be things like colours. Different colours in different parts of the world have a completely different meaning. So you're looking at somewhere maybe like Korea, and the colour white is generally associated with death. Look at numbers, something like the number 8, where in South Asia it's considered lucky. China is considered lucky. So if you're going to come up with a product, make sure it's got lots of 8 on it. Is try to decide if it's for you or if it's not.
Right.
And that's the secret. And by giving you all the information, it's so much easier for you to make that decision. And there's nothing wrong with getting to the end of the process and thinking, actually, I don't fancy exporting. It's not for me because of this, this, and this. As long as it's not you saying, well, I still don't feel confident enough,
yeah.
I'm a bit scared or whatever, but I really would like to do it, because we can always work on trying to find a way forward. Business is not operating properly or correctly, you're not making the profit, you don't have the time to look at anything else, then you need to readjust, you need to have a look at what you're doing and maybe make some tweaks. And that's the kind of thing that is very, very easily done. And I mean, I talk with companies all the time about different things of that nature. What can they do differently? How can they release the time? How can they get more money to make their operation profitable so that maybe they can look at export? It's the kind of thing that comes up all the time.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Welsh podcast. I'm joined today by Robin Hill. He's come all the way from Pembroke to join our podcast, so really excited to have this conversation with you.
Great.
Are you okay to give a brief introduction into yourself and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Robin Hill and I'm an export trade advisor from the Export Academy at Department for Business and Trade, which is a very long title, but essentially we help people, entrepreneurs, small businesses to export and to demystify the whole process of exporting.
Amazing. So do you want to tell us a bit more about what that kind of support is for entrepreneurs and small businesses?
Sure, yeah. If I can just go back to maybe where I started, right, and then go on to that. So I've run my own businesses since 1997, many years ago. And in that time, I've learned many lessons about trading in the UK, as well as exporting, as well as importing, so everything really. So what I tend to do is, as part and parcel of the support that we provide at Export Academy, is use a lot of my own experience, lessons that I've learned in the past, that hopefully will help entrepreneurs, small businesses, not to make the same ones, because some of them can be quite costly.
So for that, actually, whilst we're on it, what are some of those key challenges and mistakes really that you've seen are common for yourself, but then also other businesses?
One of the best that I ever made was when I was importing, on that occasion, some wine. I got my paperwork completely wrong, and I ended up having something like 12 pallets of wine. So a pallet is 750 bottles, all being delivered to my home address instead of the warehouse. So that was a bit embarrassing. I managed to get it changed.
Okay, all right.
But it's the kind of thing that anybody can make as a mistake. But it was one of those moments. We get lots and lots of people that want to know lots of information. So for example, you listen to the media at the moment and they'll tell you it's very difficult to export. We've got people that can help you overcome things. So if you're worried about things like VAT in Europe, which is a big thing, then we can help you overcome that. If you've got products that you want to send to the other side of the world, New Zealand, Australia, we can talk to you about that, and we can make sure that everything's going well there for you. So we've got a recent free trade agreement which would make that easier. So there's a whole host of support and information we can provide to people.
Okay, so taking a step back, why should any business, any viable business really consider export?
Right, okay, so the reason for exporting is going to make you more profit long term. It's going to extend and use up any spare capacity that you've got. So for example, if you currently are producing some goods, you're using 70% of your capacity, it gives you an avenue for selling the extra 30% capacity that you might have. You're going to have a much more loyal workforce, essentially because you're going to pay them more. And overall, companies pay something like 7% more where they're exporting as a company to their staff, and that keeps the staff happy. And especially at this time where money is tight for most people. So exporting companies generally much more profitable, much more focused, and probably a lot more fun, certainly based on my own experience.
Okay, so you're saying that, so can anybody just export? If I've got a service, if I've got a product, can anyone just do it?
Yeah.
Or would you say there's specific types of businesses that it's more aligned to?
No, I think you can pretty much, any business can look to do it. If you've got a specific product or service, you want to send it overseas, you can do it and we can help you. There's no reason not to.
Okay, I think that's really good to know. So actually on that, can you walk us through the journey of the support that your department provides?
Yep.
So let's just say, Kim, I've got a service that I want to export overseas.
Yep.
I haven't really quite decided where, because I actually don't know where I can export to. How will you help me from that point where I meet you and I'm telling you I've got this idea? I haven't done anything yet. I don't even have the business yet, but it's something that I'm thinking about. How will you support me to a point where I can actually successfully export?
Okay, so what we'll do to start with is we'll explain to you the barriers to you exporting, but also the benefits. So we'll go through all of that with you so you know exactly what you're potentially getting yourself into. Now the reason we do that is so that you can decide if you're likely to want to do it.
Right.
Then from there we look at things like how are you going to sell, what countries. So we'll help you to find countries depending on your experience, depending on your product, depending on our experience, our knowledge, if you like. We've got something like 5,000 or so people across the globe, and they can all assist you just in that one area of what market, what country to export to. We can help with things like shipping, getting goods across the world, whether that be close to home, whether it be the other side of the world. We can give you advice there, introduce you to agents, distributors. We can look at things like sales and marketing to make sure that you get your message across in whatever countries you want to sell in as effectively as possible. And believe you me, there's lots and lots of different ways to get that message across around the world. And we can't just assume that advertising on Facebook in every country around the world is going to do the business for us, because, for example, in countries like China, they use a system called QQ. And if you want to sell your product over there, you would probably use something called QQ Enterprise. Right. That gets you to about 800 million users. Whereas Facebook wouldn't be half as effective in China.
You just wouldn't know.
No.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of knowledge. It's making sure that you have the right agents and distributors, that your route to market, that is how you're taking your product from here over to whatever country. Are you selling direct? Are you selling through an agent, through a distributor? Are you selling on a platform like Amazon? All these kind of things. And we can look at all of these and give you the absolute sort of best advice. But at the end of the day, you also have to do it yourself. You have to believe in it. We can give you all the information. It's then up to you to decide. But the beauty is that at the end of the process, you then have access to something called great.gov.uk, which is a fantastic resource, and it almost writes your business plan, your export business plan for you, by literally putting your product in, your countries, and then it starts to piece everything together for you, and then we can work on that. So there is so much support out there.
No, definitely. So you mentioned obviously a couple of the benefits, for people who want to export. Can you speak a bit about the barriers and some of the challenges that people face when they're trying to export anything?
Yeah, I mean, to my mind, the biggest one probably is they don't have the right self-belief.
All right.
Yeah, so it's easy to send goods from where we are today, Swansea, say up to Liverpool. That's nice and easy. If something goes wrong, we can generally sort it out fairly easily. But if you're sending it from Swansea and it's going over to Auckland, it's a bit more difficult. So it's that kind of just belief that you can do it. And that's what we're looking to build for you, is to give you that self-belief. Because self-belief is based on knowledge. It's based on looking in a mirror and saying to yourself, I can do this. I know I can do it. And that's where we want you to be at the end of it. But for those odd occasions where you can't fathom it, where you can't work it out, we're there to help you. So that's the biggest one to me. But then there's things like culture. We have so many different cultures around the world where you can very easily make mistakes, and that can be things like colours. Different colours in different parts of the world have a completely different meaning. So you're looking at somewhere maybe like Korea, and the colour white is generally associated with death. Look at numbers, something like the number 8, where in South Asia it's considered lucky. China is considered lucky. So if you're going to come up with a product, make sure it's got lots of 8s on it. That's a bit basic, but it's that kind of thing. Different things around the world can sometimes just put us off the exporting side.
But I think going back to what you said about self-belief, I think it's something that's actually very common, because obviously with the work that we do with entrepreneurs here, I think that's one of the biggest barriers that we find. People just literally lacking the confidence in themselves to carry their idea forward, and all they need is just knowing that they've got a person at the end of the call to just reaffirm them and just help them with the next steps, if it's that, or just actually provide the practical support. So I think it's just really important that you're also able to support them on that level as well.
Yeah, no, we can, and we have different support levels for different types of customer. So some people will want a more hands-on approach. So we have something called export support service, where they can send messages and they'll get fairly quick answers back. For slightly larger companies, we have international trade advisors that can give one-to-one advice. We have export support service international market staff around the globe, and they can help. They're kind of situated in all the different countries that we have representation in, and they can give very much hands-on advice. So there really, and that's just a few examples, but there really is an awful lot of support out there.
So based on your experience working with the department, is there one key success story that you could share with us? And actually, what I'm really interested in is knowing what made that business or that export opportunity successful. What was it that the entrepreneur did that just supported in that?
There's one that always sticks in my mind. A gentleman up in Wolverhampton, and he won't mind me mentioning the name of the company, SG Imports and Exports. He joined up with Export Academy about a year or so ago. So I'd only been in the business for 3 or 4 months or so. And he and I just got on very, very well from the start. He enrolled, he went through every single one of our modules, 1 to 10, in order. Very unusual. And he was like a young sponge. He wanted to absorb all this information. And within probably about 3 or 4 months of finishing all the modules, he made his first export. Now, he was young, and so he was in a position where he developed his website, and he said he had something like 26 different specialities, and they ranged from wine through to aircraft parts. And I kind of just suggested to him, well, maybe we want to tone this down, because at the age of late 20s, it's very unusual that somebody would have that level of experience. So when a potential customer looks at your website, you maybe want them to think, yeah, this person specialises in 2 or 3 areas, and I can believe that. Whereas if they're looking and they've got 26 different areas, my lord, that's quite a lot. You know? So it was toning that down a bit and getting that speciality, and then looking at the different parts of the world that he wanted to trade with. But he was young, he had self-belief. Every now and then we'd touch base and we'd talk about kind of practical issues like setting up his company, because having done that for several companies myself, my own companies, then I'm more than happy to talk to him about that. Registering for things like VAT, we were able to look at things like that, bank accounts, all the practical stuff, as well as him absorbing and learning as he went along. So yeah, that's one that absolutely sticks in my mind, because he is now exporting to many parts of the world. He had a very specialised amplifier system with some kind of, and I don't really understand it, but some kind of technological app associated with it. And I introduced him to a vineyard in the West Midlands, just outside of Kidderminster, because with my background in wine, I just suggested he might want to think about selling wine. He's now selling fizzy wine from that vineyard in various places around the world. So it can be done. He had no experience of wine.
That's a key point.
But I was able to give him an awful lot of information about wine. I was able to introduce him to some wine growers in this country, and I was able to help him sort of practically and also on the export side. And he's gone from strength to strength, and he's a lovely lad. And
Amazing.
Yeah.
No, amazing. I think for me, what comes out a lot is you're acting almost as a critical friend, and providing all the support, just holding someone's hand, giving as much support as they need or as little as they need, just depending on where they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because we know that, going into business, whether it's export or just like normal business in your local area, it's something that can be a bit, isolating and lonely, especially when there's people that haven't gone through similar experiences to you and you just don't know what to do. I think it just really is valuable to just have that second person to just, throw ideas around with, and then for them to give you feedback that you can actually use to change whatever you need to change.
I think it's invaluable. And just to say, I totally agree with you on that, because one of the things is that you can very easily get disillusioned because you get a knockback and you think you're the only person that's had that knockback. But when you talk to somebody about it, you discover actually it happens quite a lot, and this is how you overcome it. And that's all part of the self-confidence thing, is keeping that self-confidence alive. You can't be self-confident all the way through. You will have dips, you will have peaks and troughs, but there will always be somebody that can help you. Certainly from DBT, Department for Business and Trade, there's always a resource that can give you some direction.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I think that's really true, because failure is only really a failure once you stop trying.
Yep.
So I think, just knowing that there's always something that you can do to come back from it. But also I think sometimes also knowing when to stop, because I think that's always sometimes a bit of a challenge with businesses. It's knowing, okay, this has failed for so long. At what point do you stop, or what point do you give up? And at what point do you still keep on trying, really? So it's just having that discernment, really.
No, totally. And that's one of the things that we try to get out early within Export Academy, is try to decide if it's for you or if it's not.
Right.
And that's the secret. And by giving you all the information, it's so much easier for you to make that decision. And there's nothing wrong with getting to the end of the process and thinking, actually, I don't fancy exporting. It's not for me because of this, this and this. As long as it's not you saying, well, I still don't feel confident enough,
yeah.
I'm a bit scared or whatever, but I really would like to do it, because we can always work on trying to find a way forward.
Yeah, definitely. So we've spoken quite a bit about exporting in general. I'm keen to hear more about what your thoughts are on the opportunities for Wales. Obviously, you're on the Welsh Dream, and I think Wales has amazing. There we go. Yes. For those listening, we are pointing at our Welsh Dream sign. So I think there's a lot of value and a lot of resource in Wales for a lot of things. I think it's really a hub for people trying to start out. What are the opportunities that you are seeing in your work, particularly in Welsh business?
Well, luckily enough, I lead on Export Academy in Wales, which puts me in quite a good position. So I see that there's an awful lot of time, effort, money being put into encouraging companies to export, in terms of giving them support, in terms of giving them additional resource. So you have people like Business for Wales, part of the Welsh Government. They have their own teams that are looking very much at increasing the amount of export trade. There are various shows, conferences on at different times. In October we've got Welsh Tech Week, for example, and that's good for any technical company. There really is an awful lot out there going on. And I sit on something called the Wales Export Ecosystem, and that's something where we bring together people like ourselves at Export Academy, finance, so banks, and different parts of Welsh Government, and any particular part of business or associated areas that can help businesses to start exporting, give them the information they need. So people like Institute of Export, Institute of Directors, there's so many different divisions or parts of government and external sources that are within that. And the whole emphasis there is to try and find solutions to people to allow them to export. So I can cross-refer. So if somebody, for example, if their only problem is that they're struggling to find finance, I can cross-refer and we can use one of the finance options and hopefully get you some help on that. If it's insurance, a similar kind of thing. There are so many different resources out there, but the biggest thing is that we kind of are a gateway to opening them, and we're a gateway that people don't generally know about, but if you come to us, you'll find out all about it.
No, I think it's excellent that you mentioned all of that, because it also shows just how interconnected things are. I think as a nation, Wales is just very open to working together collaboratively across all departments, across all sectors, etc. And I think there's just so much value in doing that for the people benefiting from it. So I think it's really good that you've shared all of this as well, because again, like you said, the support is there, but sometimes there is just this mismatch because people actually don't know it's there. So people go through a lot of challenges which sometimes they could avoid because they just don't know what's available for them. So I think just as well, more needs to be done to just publicize all this amazing work and all this amazing support that's available for people.
Oh, absolutely, it does, and that's what we're about. We're all about signposting any resource that's out there that might potentially help somebody.
So I guess moving on to the Welsh Dream as a concept in particular, I think if I can summarize it, it's all about trying to create an environment where everybody knows that they're able to succeed, where they can dream big and know that there's support available for them, and also at the same time the economic and social structures that exist are conducive for all of that. So for it to actually work, I think there's a lot of players that need to come together, private sector, the public sector, charity sector, the community themselves. So for you, what role do you see the government, I guess that's a big question, but the government playing in trying to support all of that, really, the upward mobility of individuals?
Gosh, well, that's well above my pay grade. But if I bring it just back down to Department for Business and Trade, certainly we can play our part in integrating into these ecosystems. So you say about bringing lots of agencies together. We're already doing that within Wales, because there is an awful lot of potential here. And I think everybody realises that. And post-COVID, it's really stepped up a gear or two. So there's a lot more live events going on. There's a lot more meeting, talking, trying to bring different resources to the table with different organisations within government. So people like UK Export Finance are part of government, they're part of DBT, ourselves. There's lots of different agencies, and we're all looking to work together. So for example, were I to come back here and talk to a number of your entrepreneurs or your clients, then it's quite feasible that I could bring somebody from Export Support Services or UK Export Finance to talk to them as well. And so we can start to join up the dots. And I think the secret to making Wales successful and to achieving the Welsh Dream really is about doing that, bringing it all back together. Take it back to basics. Make it nice and simple for people to approach, and to get information from, and then take them forward. And really, to my mind, I've seen it works, it really does, and we are all totally committed to doing that. And in terms of Wales, Wales is a fantastic country. I live in Brecon, and what I love about Wales is this passion. And I don't know, recently the Brecon Beacons decided to change back to the Welsh title, Banau Breconiog, and I thought,
you can say that nicely.
I said it quickly. but I think it's wonderful because it's about regaining your heritage, and Wales has a rich history, a rich heritage. And really it's about tapping into that. And I think an awful lot of Welsh or successful Welsh businesses do that, and they embrace it. And there's a lot of people overseas that look upon things that are made in UK, generally wide, as being very, very high quality, good safety systems, fit for purpose, and they're prepared, believe it or not, to pay a premium for that. And so the beauty is, and I always stress this to anybody, and certainly whenever I'm talking to companies in Wales, is don't undersell yourself. If you have a product that's quality, if you have a product that you absolutely believe in, then do not sell yourself short. There is no need to. In actual fact, I've heard of contracts not being won because they've been too cheap, believe it or not, because the expectation is for the kind of service that we can offer from Welsh companies, from UK companies, it's that it is going to be more expensive.
That's interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. The key thing there is just the importance of people being authentic in themselves and that reflecting in their business. Because I think the businesses that tend to succeed are the ones where the leader is passionate, because they're able to carry it through, because that passion carries through their service or their product, and their consumers will see it on the other end of it. And also it also just gives them that unique selling point, because again, you're only won you in this world, and that one thing that's special about you will still shine through in your business as well. So I think that's just a really key point for everyone, any entrepreneur, to just always tap into that one thing about themselves that's different and unique, and just have that reflected in whatever they're trying to do, really.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And when you are talking about businesses in Wales, it doesn't just have to be a Welsh business, because we have multicultural businesses now as well, and that is also in itself a USP. So if you are looking to sell overseas and you have that angle, that's an addition. So not only are you in the UK where we have high standards and overseas people have a high expectation, you're then taking something that's slightly richer and exporting that as well. And that to me is often forgotten about. It's almost trying to be too like everybody else, or price like everybody else, or look like everybody else. Actually, there's nothing wrong with being different. Yeah,
and I think that's, when we hear about the EDI movement, diversity and all of that, that is the important thing about diversity, because I think, again, particularly in Wales, we've got migrants from all over the world. There's a lot that people can learn from other parts of the world, and that just translates into different business products as well. So I think that's a key thing.
No, absolutely. And we're quite lucky. We have a really diverse clientele that come through on Export Academy. And one of the things, I think I mentioned this to you before when we were talking, one of the things that we quite often do is if English isn't your first language, when we're doing webinars and we encourage questions from people, then we don't open the mics all the way through, but at the end we will, so that if you prefer to ask your question rather than write it, if English isn't your first language, that might help you a little bit. And then we can take things offline from there and maybe assist in different ways. So just coming back to this whole thing, we are trying to be as motivational, as service people as much as we possibly can, and offer a service that sort of does it for them.
And especially, like you're saying, for literally anyone who's able to access it, and not excluding anyone just by not considering, like you said, it could be something that could be easily ignored, right? Language, because, for example, your first language is English, so you wouldn't think, okay, is there someone else who might not be? So I think just having all of those things actually really is helpful.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it just reflects really what the message we're trying to put out there, which is about culture. It's about, if you're going to sell a product overseas somewhere, you need to understand their culture. And equally at Export Academy, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to understand and accept that there are so many different cultures, and we're trying to provide this service to all of them.
So, Robin, what advice would you give to Welsh businesses who are thinking potentially about trading internationally, but are a bit hesitant to start, or just not quite sure, really?
Okay, so come along to Export Academy.
Okay.
And we can talk you through the whole process. We can give you lots and lots of information and put you in a position where, if you are seriously considering exporting, then you will be in a position where you can make that decision or not to go ahead. We won't say it's easy and we won't say it's hard, but we have lots and lots of resource out there for Welsh businesses that will assist you in your journey, in your ambitions, aspirations to hit an export market. And we'll do it in a really structured way that hopefully will make sense to you and will be at your own pace. And that's the thing, we're not rushing anybody. This journey can take years for some people. Some people, they can do it in months. But everybody is different, and we totally appreciate that.
And I think also, just to add, I'm marketing you as well. But then I think from what we've spoken about already, you said it's not just about export, because sometimes there's things that you see in a person's business that you think, okay, maybe if we tweaked that slightly, that would help them succeed, not only internationally, but also even wherever they're operating from already. So again, for me, just comes back to just having that critical friend to support you on your journey. Yeah,
and that's what we try to do. We try to give the appropriate resource to companies that's appropriate for them at any one time. I mean, I can think of an example. It wasn't a Welsh company. It's right on the border, sort of Herefordshire and Wales. Okay. So almost Wales. And they send over a couple of containers every month to Thailand. Okay. But they were sending these over to wholesalers, so they weren't making too much of a return. They weren't making too much profit on it. So they asked us what they could do. So I put them in touch with what we call a sector specialist. So that's somebody that understands more of the retail kind of market, and a specialist in South Asia. And we all got online. We had a good old chat. the result was that instead of sending 2 containers over to Thailand every month, they are now sending 2 containers to completely different countries, and they are sending them more to a retail-based operation, meaning that their profit has pretty much doubled on every container. So it's not just about doing something different, exporting. It's about sometimes, if you are doing the exporting, or even if you're in the domestic markets, just doing something different, just to make sure that you're making more profit, you're making the most out of the effort, the commitment that you're giving to your work.
Mm-hmm. So it's actually when you were speaking, there's something that came to mind. Is there, because sometimes export might not just be for everybody, and they might realize this after they've gone through the whole academy or spoken to a couple of advisors or whatever it may be. So is there anything that you think may be transferable from your knowledge on export and obviously the content that you guys deliver? Mm-hmm. Is there anything transferable to just a regular business that's locally based?
Totally. I always put across that your export business plan is part of your business plan. That is your domestic business plan. It's just one small part. And if you have put a business plan together in this country and you are looking at export, then that's fine. But your domestic plan always comes first, because if your business is not operating properly or correctly, you're not making the profit, you don't have the time to look at anything else, then you need to readjust. You need to have a look at what you're doing and maybe make some tweaks. And that's the kind of thing that is very, very easily done. And I mean, I talk with companies all the time about different things of that nature. What can they do differently? How can they release the time? How can they get more money to make their operation profitable so that maybe they can look at export? It's the kind of thing that comes up all the time.
Okay, interesting. Again, something else. So obviously now we've just emerged out of COVID. Has there been any difference that you've seen in terms of business, both locally and ones that trade internationally?
That's a really good question.
Put you on the spot.
Just a bit. I do. I mean, the feedback that I get from different companies is that things are opening up much more. And certainly to Welsh companies where there's a predominant reliance for food and drink, for example, in Wales. And so the markets generally there are opening up. There's a lot more opportunity now. I mean, you look at things like free trade agreements with Australia, New Zealand, the recent one with CPTPP. They are very big. In fact, they're massive. The last one that went live 2 days ago, CPTPP, opens up 11 countries across Asia, including New Zealand and Australia, and that's forecast to become a massive market for the UK. So yes, since COVID, we've moved on. Businesses now have adjusted. They've got themselves mainly into a position where they've got the right levels of staff now, so they can rely on their staff turning up for work, because that was a big problem. They can get people into a warehouse so that they can pick orders, or on a production line so that they can do that, or in the same room so they can have meetings. So yes, life has become easier. As a result now, companies are looking outside at other markets. And especially in the UK, because sometimes in different businesses, different industries, you'll find it's a saturated market. So you need to look outside the UK maybe. Okay,
excellent. So just to close off, would you like to share what your own Welsh dream is then?
My own Welsh dream is to see as many companies, Welsh companies, exporting as possible. Now, that kind of sounds quite glib, but I have a genuine belief that Welsh companies have something very special to bring to the world, to take to the world. It's like a little Britain, if you like. Yes, it's, to my mind, the best of Britain.
I agree there.
I thought you might. and there's this message about Welsh goods and services that's underpinned by years and years of history and passion and belief. And you've only got to go to what was the old Cardiff Arms Park, obviously now it's the Principality, on match day between England and Wales, and that passion, that hwyl really comes out and you really feel it. And I think the same applies for Welsh businesses. They've got some great products, some great services to offer, and the world is ready for them.
Oh, I love that. I think especially just to add on to what you said, what I love a lot about Wales is just that sense of community, and that shines through in even business or whatever sector that you're in.
Yep.
So yeah, can't beat that. Oh, fab. Thank you so much, Robin.
No, thank you, Kim.
No, this was great. Okay, bye.
Signing out.